strikes strategic trade accord with Vietnam amid global tariff shakeup. In a surprise diplomatic maneuver, former President Donald Trump announced a new trade agreement with Vietnam, significantly recalibrating tariffs rate and signaling further shifts in US trade policy under his leadership. The deal comes just days before sweeping tariffs were scheduled to take effect and positions Vietnam as one of several nations working to secure favorable terms and aim at escalating global trade tension. Under a new agreement, many Vietnamese exports to the United States will face a 20% tariff, substantially lower than the previously announced 46% levy. Additionally, the deal introduces a 40% tariff on goods transshipped through Vietnam from third countries, a clause widely interpreted as a veiled measure to curb circumvention of tariffs on Chinese goods. Details on enforcement mechanisms for the transshipment clause remain unclear. Conversely, the United States is to enjoy tariff-free access for its exports to Vietnam, particularly in sectors such as automotive with large engine vehicles, highlighted by Trump as having significant market potential in the Southeast Asian nation. It's my great honor to announce that I have just made a trade deal with the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, Trump declared via Truth Social. He added that American-made SUVs would be a wonderful addition to Vietnamese consumer offering. The announcement followed a phone conversation between Trump and Vietnamese President Lam, during which Hanoi reiterated its long-standing request for Washington to recognize Vietnam as a market economy and ease restrictions on high-tech exports. While these requests have historically been dismissed by US administration, the current context of intensified trade diplomacy leaves the door open to future concessions. Since the onset of Trump's aggressive tariff regime against China in 2018, US-Vietnam trade relations have flourished. American importers seeking alternatives to Chinese manufacturing have turned to Vietnam in droves. As a result, Vietnamese exports to the US surged nearly threefold, from under $50 billion in 2018 to approximately $137 billion in 2024, according to US Census Bureau data. However, the trade balance remained heavily titled. US exports to Vietnam increased modestly to just over $13 billion in the same period, prompting criticism from some domestic industries and policymakers. The Trump administration has voiced growing concern over Vietnam's trade surplus, which exceeded $123 billion last year. In response, Vietnam has taken steps to narrow the gap by lowering tariffs on US imports, committing to greater purchases of American goods, and intensifying scrutiny on Chinese tech components in re-exported devices. For Vietnam, the stakes are particularly high. Its heavily export-oriented economy could suffer significant shocks if access to the US market is curtailed. The government, however, remains publicly optimistic, maintaining a growth target of at least 8% for 2024. Efforts to diversify trade partnership and reduce reliance on Chinese material are ongoing. But Vietnam remains tethered to Beijing for critical imports in its manufacturing sector. The current trade agreement with the US thus represents both an opportunity and a tightrope walk, balancing strategic autonomy with economic dependency. As global trade alignment continues to shift under Trump's assertive approach, Vietnam's agreement may serve as a blueprint for other nations navigating a new American-led tariff landscape.